meeting to order of the village board. It is 7:43. It appears that all trustees are present except trustee Warren, who is excused for a moment. Has this meeting been publicly noticed? The meeting has been publicly noticed. Thank you. Today we have a special order of business, and I have been asked by staff if it would be possible for someone to make a motion to switch 4A and 4B on the agenda to allow the police union agreement to move forward first. So I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. The first special order of business would be to consider the police union agreement for 2019 to 2020, and attorney forum is here.
Good evening. I'll be very brief because a lot of people want to talk about the other issue, I guess. You should have in your packets a copy, red line copy of the 2019-2020 two-year collective bargaining agreement with Local 307 representing the police union. I'll spend a couple minutes just going over what the substantive changes are, so if anybody has any questions about them, I'd be happy to answer them. I'll go over them fairly quickly. Hopefully you've had a chance to look them over. And again, if you have any questions, certainly let me know. And I'll address the wage issue at the end because that's the one with the financial impact. In Article 3 of the contract, we made a number of editorial changes to the language to take into account the new United States Supreme Court case and the Janus decision affecting union dues and employees' ability to opt out of paying union dues, so that's now compliant with the new law. In Section 4.03 of the contract, again skipping over the wage changes, Mark Danielson wanted, there was a problem when new employees were hired, right out of the box they got their normal paycheck, even though they may not have worked enough hours to justify paying them that much. And then 25 years later, when they left, we did a financial adjustment to make up for that. That doesn't make any sense, and so Mark wanted that changed. So now the initial paycheck, the language now reads that their initial paycheck will reflect how many hours they actually worked in their first payroll, and then they'll get their regular paycheck every month after that. So that cleans up some administrative bookkeeping that Mark was looking for. In 5.06, there's a notification process for when we change the hours of the relief shift officer. We tightened that language up to make it a little more streamlined and a little simpler for the police chief or the police administration to give proper notice to the relief shift officer. Two fundamental changes in 18.01 related to clothing allowance. First of all, historically, employees who have needed to buy additional clothing, bought that clothing, submitted the expenses, and then they were reimbursed up to a maximum number of dollars that was set forth in the collective bargaining agreement. We respect the professionalism of our law enforcement officers. We decided to simply give them that amount of money up front at the beginning of every year, and then from that money they will make the various uniform purchases that they need throughout the course of the year. Many departments have gone in that direction. It eases a lot of administrative and bureaucratic burden on the organization, on Mark, on the chief. And again, it reflects the confidence that we have in the professionalism of our law enforcement staff. So that change was made. The second change then also increases the amount of clothing allowance by $60 per year per employee. Currently, we are paying $575 for one group of employees and $625 for the other. We've increased both those numbers by $60 to reflect the increased cost of uniforms. It's been, I think, about 4 years before the amount of uniform allowance has been increased. And with the amount of leather goods, uniform clothing, jackets, other sorts of accoutrements that police officers have to buy out of this clothing allowance, and the increase in those costs, we felt the $60 increase per year per employee was justified. And then lastly, in 19.01, we got rid of some outmoded language that required that we have prisoner cages in all our cars. We intend to continue to have prisoner cages in all of our cars, but we didn't think that that was a proper topic for the collective bargaining agreement. We think that's a management right. And so that change was agreed upon. On the wages, we had a closed session with the board several weeks ago to talk about parameters. We stayed within those parameters. The wage increase is 1.25% effective January 1 of 2019, and an additional 1% on July 1 of 2019. And then again in 2020, the same thing, 1.25 on 1/1 of 20, and another 1% on 1/1 of 21. As it turns out, when you compare that to a 2% at the beginning of the year, of each year for 2 years, which is what we talked about in closed session, this arrangement actually costs the village $3,300 less than the 2% and the 2% would have cost. So it's a little bit of a cost savings. Of course, at the end of the 2 years, police officers are at a slightly higher wage rate than had they had the 2%. So there's a delayed impact 2 years out. We're comfortable with doing that, and we certainly recommend that for this reason. Going into our closed session with all of you, the settlement pattern had been strictly 2% for everybody except Bayside, which had settled for 2% in 19 and 2.5% in 2020. A week before we had our final meeting with Union, Whitefish Bay settled. They're our closest neighbor to the north. They settled for 2.5 in 2019 and 2.5 in 2020. So the settlement we reached was still less than what Whitefish Bay gave to their law enforcement officers, but it was a little bit higher than probably we had hoped to get. Long run though, we stayed within the parameters you had set for us in closed session, to the tune of about $3,300. We think it's a fair deal. The process went well. I think it was respectful. The union leadership was very professional throughout, and we're able to reach an agreement in about two sessions, which went very well. Ms. Ewald was involved in the bargaining process as well, as was the police chief, and I think it was a successful result. So we recommend approval of the collective bargaining agreement. Anybody have any questions?
Trustee Murphy.
Yeah, thank you for your work on this, and I'm excited to at least support our police department and vote in favor of this. I would like to have some information, though, not on the percentage, but on can you get us comparative information on the actual salary amounts starting and steps for some of our comparable places? I just would like to see that salary comparison.
We can certainly provide that to you.
Okay,
certainly.
thank you.
I can tell you, generally speaking, what that information will show. You'll find that your annual salaries are a little bit lower than your comparable communities, but our work schedule, you can't analyze just salaries. You have to analyze salaries in light of the work schedule. Your police officers here, because of the schedule, work fewer hours in the long run than most of your comparables. So you have a little bit lower salary, but they work fewer hours. And so when you compare apples to apples, when you break that down into an hourly rate, you're very competitive. You're right in the middle of the pack. But we can get you all that data in a future meeting. Okay, thank you.
On the uniform,
Yep.
the first year, they get the list, and they just get a whole set of units. Is that how it's set up?
The other part of the language, which was also changed, and this is not fundamentally changed in terms of the cost.
Right.
Your first year, we give you your entire uniform, but you don't get any money. And then beginning in your second year, you get a little bit of extra money under the theory that your uniform is still new and doesn't need replacing and updating. And then your in essence, your third year with the department, you get a little bit more money. And then going into your fourth year, then you get the full amount that everyone else gets. So it's sort of fixed. Okay?
Is that every year then after year 4?
Every year after year 4, they get the uniformed officers get $535 under the tentative agreement. And the detectives get $565.
So my question is, after the 4th year, if you're purchasing all new, why would it start over? That you get less the 5th year, like, and you build up to the 7th? I mean, technically you would need a new uniform on year 5.
The uniform consists of several pairs of pants, several shirts, some uniform purchases you don't need to make every year. For example, the duty belt that they wear, that may last 7, 8, or 9 years. So these amounts are designed to reflect enough money to update and refresh the uniform on an ongoing basis.
So my only question is there a sample of what, I'm sure you've looked at this, but what was spent on uniforms compared to if we just gave a bulk amount of $600 every single year? So I know it's more administrative work, but my question was, have we over a 10-year period or whatever, 5-year period, does that officer actually spend all the money that would be allocated?
Yeah. I mean, the short answer is yes. Officers will use more than this amount. I mean, even at this amount, officers will still spend some money out of their own pocket to maintain a good, sharp-looking uniform. No question
You
about it.
have the data for that.
Oh, I mean, historically, every year, the amount of money that we've been giving has not been enough to cover all of the expenses that officers have for their uniforms.
But we have like a 5-year history of how
Correct.
much was spent.
Well, we've always spent all the money. I mean, the officers spend all the money every year and then some. Because the cap is amount. It's not like we had an unlimited amount that we gave them. We know that they have used up this amount every year. Sure. Yeah. See, some of them spend less in any given year because they're saving up for a new jacket. And that's like $800. And so they have to save up a little bit every year so that when it comes time to buy the jacket or buy the new uniform, buy the new belt, or buy other leathers that they have to buy, they have enough money saved up. So they may not use that same amount every year, but over time, this uniform allowance is less than what they would spend.
I would make a motion to approve the agreement between the Village of Shorewood and the Shorewood Police Association, Local 307, for the period January 2019 to December 31, 2020.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you.
So the next item on our agenda is a special order of business. Consider the petition to restrict parking on Clinton Avenue from North Oakland Avenue to North Hall Street. And we have Rebecca who will give us a summary. Manager Ewald.
Included within your packet this evening is a memo outlining the date of submission of the petition and the internal staff review. We have planning and development department, we have the police department, and the public works department weigh in with their analysis of the situation. In front of your seats this evening is an updated chart that should be referenced in lieu of the chart provided by the police department that was located within the memo. It just speaks to what we're looking at here in this chart are other roadways and comparable road width and what their parking restrictions are, which was a request that generated from the first memo that was done.
Why is it different?
There were some modifications and mistakes that were on the original one, so this is an up-to-date, accurate. So for purposes of the discussion tonight, and in the absence of a prescriptive process for evaluating parking petitions, we wanted to come and bring this information to the board and allow the board the opportunity to hear any comments. I'm sure there's some people here who may desire to provide the board with comments, if that is your choosing at this point tonight. And if not, staff would like to seek direction from the board in terms of how to proceed with this request.
And just to clarify, what is the request to limit parking on both sides of the street through a segment or on one side of the street? I know there was, in the emails, there was a little confusion.
Oh, the emails provided by the public.
Yep, and Diane's response back. I believe it's one side of the street.
My understanding was
two-sided at the
cross
bottom.
street.
One-sided at the other part of the street.
You said it again, Diane, I apologize.
Two-sided at the wider part of the street from Oakland to the alley, and then one-sided going forward.
From the alley to,
From Oakland to the alley heading west.
As of December 1st.
Isn't it? No, that's too loud.
It's
Parking all the
two-sided.
time.
Can you explain a little further? I think we're a little bit.
So I believe the area from Oakland west to the alley is the bump out broader section. And that is 2 hours parking all year round.
Oh,
After that, it goes to one side of the street during the winter.
so you were talking current state.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Current state is two. They're parking on both sides of the street as of today.
all the way
Yes,
to,
they are.
can I just clarify for a second?
I
There'll be
thought
time
it's
for
the
public-
winter side of the street.
There'll be time for public comment, and I will definitely allow it. So, just to clarify, we're talking about Oakland to New Hall, is that correct? Parking on both sides of the street. and what we want to do about that. Is it to New Hall? Is Diane saying this?
Yeah, my understanding, and Diane can weigh in if she believes differently, but my understanding was that the request was to New Hall.
The written request says to leave our one exit alley on the south side of the street on Kensington between New Hall and Bartlett.
Is the petitioner here?
We can't get out of our alley.
Oh, can you
During
just say
summer?
your name and your
Okay,
address? I
Rita
apologize.
Tisser, 4454. We passed a petition on North New Hall. We passed a petition in our couple of blocks around us because people who live on these dead-end alleys are having an increasingly difficult time getting out of the alley. So when there's, in the summer, when there's 2 lines of parking, we get to that and people do not see us, and then we have a hard time turning either right or left to get out of our alley. So that was how this originally started, and we handed it around. And someone else added on about extending the one side parking down to Frederick and further down to